just about to welcome everybody to this evening's event. Well, we're still waiting for Dr Bob Manteaw, who will be joining us. He's a climate scientist from the University of Ghana. He's due to be arriving any time now. But yes, let me just, for those of you who haven't been on one of these events with African Iwa before, I'd like to introduce you to Adele, who is a lived experience storyteller, originally from Ghana and living in West Yorkshire. And Adele, look, it sounds like you've got something for us to do.
Yes, I'm really pleased to be here, and a very good evening to all. And we're looking, pardon me, we're looking forward to a fantastic evening this evening as Bob comes to deliver his presentation. That very fine intersection of cocoa and climate, and I think that's what we are all looking forward to this evening. As part of the bigger conversation, which is the Chocolate Has a Name project. And if you're new to this project, the whole idea is to, for the first time, pilot a project where children in cocoa growing communities will go to school, learn English, math, science, and have cocoa processing as part of their everyday learning journeys at school. And so we've gone to this community, Takwabrimai, where we are piloting this project. And this week we asked the question to these children, if ever you would make a bar of chocolate, what would you name it? And it's interesting what the children have done. I'm just thinking, perhaps I pose the same question to the community this evening. If ever you would make your own bar of chocolate, what would you name it and why? Thank you, Joanna. I'm not sure if Bob is in. I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, Bob's here. So yeah, if you have a think about that throughout the course of this evening, pop it in the chat what you would call your chocolate bar if you were going to invent one. And then I'm going to hand over to Bob Manteaw, who is going to talk to us about cocoa sustainability in a changing climate.
Right. Hi.
Hi, Bob.
I am trying to get my video in, yes. So I'm here. Hi, everybody. Hi, Adele. Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
Hello.
Hi. Hi. So I am going to talk about, well, I think we probably just need a little bit of introduction. There are some of you here we've met before earlier, some I don't think we've met. So my name is Bob Manteaw. I am from the University of Ghana. I work at the Climate Change Center. I work mainly in climate change adaptation governance, and I do quite a bit of work in cocoa sustainability. I look at cocoa adaptation to climate change and all the things that come under cocoa sustainability. So I felt we could have a conversation around cocoa sustainability from a climate change perspective. And also the focus would be more on when we say or when we talk about cocoa sustainability, what do we mean? And what does it mean to the farmer? I do have a slide here which I would want to share. I will share my screen. Hopefully I'm sharing. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes, we do.
Right, sure. So basically, I feel a little bit uncomfortable that it is a little bit, it looks, as much as I would want to present this in the form of a story, a very simple story, it has a little bit of an academic painting on it, but I will try to, turn it into a narrative that would be relatable to almost everybody here and from whatever background that you've come from. I would want to emphasize on the cocoa sustainability bit of the conversation rather than the climate change. And the reason is I want us to, whenever we hear cocoa sustainability, we need to put it in some kind of historical context. We need to put it in some kind of perspective to appreciate how it has emerged, how it is doing, where it is going, and then what it is doing to the cocoa sector or the cocoa value chain or the farm gate experience, so to speak. So I would quickly go into the right. So for a roadmap, what I would want to do is talk a little bit about the history of cocoa sustainability, and I'll talk about what cocoa sustainability is or not, and then what are the issues. So very simple, not a lot of slides, and then we probably can engage in some kind of exchanges to understand some of the issues that I'm raising. In the first place, I want to talk about, you cannot talk about cocoa sustainability initiatives without reminding ourselves of the days of fair trade. And when I say the days of fair trade, I'm not saying fair trade is no more, but then the notions of fair trade have evolved, taking on more expanded meanings represented in what currently we refer to as cocoa sustainability. And I am not also saying that fair trade is only linked or associated with cocoa. We do have coffee and tea and other crops, export crops that have go by fair trade principles. But then from the cocoa context, notions of fair trade, some people believe, have been captured by current notions of sustainability to give it some expanded meaning. So in the 2000s, the chocolate industry was a little bit concerned about the prospects of farmers. You know, there were prospects of shortage in supply of cocoa beans. So the industry was concerned about the possibility of farmers diversifying into other crops, because that was what was coming up, especially in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. Farmers had started thinking about moving into other crop production, and rubber was actually coming up very strongly. And when there was bean shortage, or farmers diversify into other crops, then what it meant was the big cocoa buyers, the chocolate producers, weren't going to get the kinds of supplies that they needed. So these large chocolate producing companies, facing the prospect of shortage, decided to strategize. And part of the re-strategizing process is what brought about the idea or notions of cocoa sustainability. So first, earlier, about 10 of the world's biggest confectionery, those processing cocoa into chocolate, came together with almost a $500 million fund to introduce what has come to be known as cocoa sustainability initiatives. The first one was what we call Cocoa Action, and it was an action that was aimed at halting those diversification intentions of farmers and to keep them on the farm to maintain the volumes that they produce, and then also to adhere to some certain principles or standards that would enhance production, and also combine those ethical values that fair trade espouse with new and additional standards that would fit that language of sustainability. So these companies, from the original Cocoa Action, we have had new ones emerging almost on a daily basis, all working under the tag of cocoa sustainability, framed in the language of sustainability. If you understand, I mean, sustainability is about caring for the environment, caring for people, caring for society, making sure that we don't go beyond the planetary boundaries, doing things within, the carrying capacity of wherever we find ourselves, especially within nature. So they came up with this new notion of sustainability and framed it within the language of sustainability. So when you hear cocoa sustainability, it connotes different things. It connotes the idea of environmental care. It connotes the idea of people care. It connotes the idea of the primary, the original fair trade principles of fair pricing, ethical production processes. So basically, cocoa sustainability seems to mean almost everything. So we will need to find out what exactly cocoa sustainability. They have come, different companies, have worked in partnerships and collaborations and come up with a lot of different names. Some of them call it ethical trade standards, certification programs, private standards and eco-labels, and voluntary standards, voluntary sustainability standard, which I think currently is the most popular. Also, a lot of these are just like the fair trade programs. You either gain some kind of approval in terms of either certification or labeling. So if you have the label, if you have the fair trade label, it's your symbol of approval, and it's a symbol of market approval, which means the product has gone through all prescribed processes, and it has been certified or labeled as such that it had gone through a very rigorous process of production, and it's on the market, and it's good to go. So then it catches the eyes of consumers to buy sustainably or to buy sustainable products. So these new certification or voluntary standard programs, they follow the fair trade approach by providing either labels or certification. The key thing about these emerging programs are the certification process, and it even goes beyond that to what we call verification programs. So if you are certified, or before you even get certified, there should be a process where a product on the market could be traced back to the farm gate to be verified that all the rigorous requirements that have been put in place for farmers to follow or to adhere to were done. And one of the things they will look at is environmental standards, ethical standards. There are no children working on the farms. There are some forestry programs going on. You are not degrading the environment. Fair labor wages and stuff like that. So once all these things are satisfied, then you will be labeled, or you will be certified, and then you have approval to get on the market. So these are some of the symbols or some of the sustainability initiatives that you may find. The Cocoa Sustainability Initiative, the DISCO, there are several of them, but I just chose these two, just to let you know that several of them, and the key thing, I'm sure you will see here, the Sustainable Development Goals. A lot of these emerging cocoa sustainability initiatives align either with fair trade or the Sustainable Development Goals. One of the challenges that we've had with the whole concept, the whole idea of sustainable development is it means everything but nothing. So the goals, as we know, they are fenced. We know what they are, but they are open and flexible for anybody or any entity to align anything within the goals. So not surprisingly, a lot of the cocoa sustainability initiatives use the Sustainable Development Goals as their lighthouse, as their guide, and then they operate along those lines. So cocoa sustainability has become one of the principal organizing discourses in the cocoa value chain. And the reason is, some of which I have mentioned earlier, they are used to either regulate or guide cocoa production processes. They are also used as a market incentive or market tool. So a lot of farmers in cocoa producing regions of the world are obliged, even though it is a voluntary program, obliged because of the market implications to try to adhere to some of what is required. And like I said, it is rooted in fair trade principles and notions of cocoa sustainability notions have taken these principles a step higher. And this they have done by including issues of environmental stewardship, climate change, adaptation, and farmer resilience. They also include issues of farmer poverty, sanitation, ecological health, and issues around education and child labor. There may be others, but then the point that I think I want to stress here is that obviously it is obvious that all sustainability initiatives have some kind of alignment with original fair trade principles. But the fair trade principles were more on around issues of ethical operations and human rights. Whereas current sustainability discourses or initiatives have gone a little bit ahead of that, ahead of what, for instance, there is a focus on poverty, there's a focus on child health, there's a focus on ecological health. So those are some of the areas, expanded areas that the new sustainability initiative, cocoa sustainability initiative have brought in. So from when we say cocoa sustainability, literally, it should mean cocoa survivability. And I have always believed that whenever we talk about sustainability, we're also talking about survivability, because people need to live, people need to be sustained, societies need to be sustained, the ecology need to continue being what it is. However, it is also implied that farmer obligation, it also implies farmer obligation to some of the requirements. You know, so when we're talking about sustainability in the cocoa sector, we're also talking about, especially voluntary standards, what is it that farmers are supposed to do? What are the requirements? So if farmers are able to do A, B, C, D, E, and they get certified, then they are conforming to the rules and requirements of the notion of sustainability. And then they are certified, and certification means market approval. What this is doing to farmers is, and I'm sure there may be some farmers around here, it is putting a lot of pressure on farmers because, one, there is a certain indication or a certain implication that this is a voluntary program. Farmers are not required. Nobody can punish any farmer for either adhering to the standards or requirements or not. However, there is a silent punishment that farmers have to endure. And that silent punishment is you need to be certified. If you are not certified, you have a name. And that name stands you out. And then you are disadvantaged on the market. So, and those names are conventional and certified cocoa farmers. So if you're conventional, means you are doing is business as usual. Certified means you have reformed, you've gone through the process of renewal, and you are welcome on the market with your label of acceptance. Much as many studies have been talking about the benefits of these sustainability initiatives, there are also some who believe that there are certain aspects of it that need to be, I mean, undoubtedly, there are some good things about the sustainability, cocoa sustainability initiatives. But then there are also some, because it's being touted and because of the pressures that some farmers are coming under, there are those who believe that there are aspects of it that need to be looked at, that they raise concerns about the programs or the initiatives' ability to contribute or transform the situations of farmers. The argument is that these programs have not gone far enough to bring about any significant changes in the situations of farmers. There are those who believe that irrespective of how well-intended the cocoa sustainability initiatives are, they are tedious. You know, it's a tedious process that farmers would have to go through. Already vulnerable poor farmers will have to go through to meet those demands. They are too market driven because It's not focused on the farmer, it's focused on the market, because we want the market to accept, we want to certify, we want to label, and we want the markets to accept what has been labeled, what has been certified. And if it's not certified, what it means is then it is not good enough, in quotes. It is consumer focused, so it satisfies the consumer, and the consumer is the market, and with very little to actually impact on, bring some transformations to the farmers' lives. There is an argument that it could have been farmer focused too, and the only way it could have been farmer focused was if the cocoa buyers, the big multinationals who go to cocoa producing regions and then at the farm gate, if they go directly to the farm gate to buy the cocoa, then the farmers wouldn't have any mediators. They wouldn't have any people, mediating, any agents or mediating between them and the multinational companies. So they will get what they deserve. But the reality now is farmers toil. They go through these tedious processes to voluntarily meet the requirements as they were, and then get on the market. However, they don't get the desired prices because there are intermediaries who would buy from them and then sell it on. So they get just a fraction of what they deserve. And there are a lot of companies who are also using the initiatives framed within the language of sustainability to serve their selfish interests. Some believe they are using the discourse, the noise around there. If I say noise very guardedly, around the SDGs, around sustainable development, around climate change, around everything sustainability, to posture to help farmers, but in actual fact, they are helping themselves. It's a help that goes to themselves before the farmers. This is becoming, especially the requirements, the pressure put on farmers is becoming a lot more difficult for farmers to bear. Against the background of climate changes and extreme weather events that are hitting cocoa production very hard in different places. So it is making it a lot more difficult for farmers to meet some of these standards. Much as it is difficult, they are compelled to. They are under pressure. They don't want to be labeled conventional farmers, and they don't want to be they want to be labeled certified farmers because they have market advantages. If your bean is labeled certified, it gives you a little bit of advantage on market, because what it means is it's either ethical, it's either you have done all the environmental things that you have to. People accept it. You have a big tick on your product, which means it's good to go on the market. Farmers feel, because of all these, they feel compelled, they feel under some pressure to get these done and then to get certified. And once they do, it comes at a cost. The cost is social, the cost could be environmental, the cost could be cultural, the cost could be health-wise. So a lot of what is considered as unsustainable, to round up, a lot of what is considered as unsustainable, unacceptable farm practices from a fair trade and sustainability initiative perspective are indeed driven by the quest of farmers to survive. Farmers get into some of these programs, some of these ethical, social, human rights programs, because they want to overcome poverty. They cannot overcome poverty if they don't go through these processes of being certified to get some kind of market advantage. It becomes therefore unsustainable and unethical, and even insensitive for any sustainability and certification regime to proceed without first addressing the fundamental issues of poverty and vulnerability. This is not always the case on cocoa farms, because like I said earlier, a lot of these big cocoa purchasing companies, multinational, are using some of these initiatives first and foremost to address their own selfish interests. I mean, if I say selfish interests, their own bottom line imperatives, or their own image, a broad image on the market, poor public relations, or whatever reason it might be. And the reason is farmers still remain poor, even though they are trying very hard to go through some of these steps. The question then is, how sustainable are cocoa sustainability initiatives? Against the background of everything that farmers are going through, everything that we have seen, against the background of changing climatic conditions, making it difficult for some farmers to be able to conform to or adhere to what they are expected or required to do. You know, I say required because much as the programs are labeled voluntary standards, I mean, it's not a requirement, but because there's market competition, it almost becomes a quiet requirement, which makes it very difficult for some farmers to survive on this. So to conclude, my question, and we would have conversations around this, is how sustainable are there's all these growing cocoa sustainability initiatives? They are different types, they are different names, they come under different names, and all of them challenging farmers to do certain things. And they are trying to do, but poverty still remains. So how sustainable are these sustainability initiatives, and where do they go from here? So I think this is where I end the conversation. I will pause here for questions, and then probably that would begin the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. That was really interesting. Would you mind stopping sharing your screen so that I can see everybody, and then I'll bring the questioners through. So yeah, if you either raise your hand or attract my attention, or just unmute and ask if you have any questions for Bob, any comments on what you've heard tonight. So I think I can't see anybody with a question at the moment, but I'm going to kick off just by asking, there's a question from Kwame.
Yeah, hi, thank you very much.
Oh, you've muted yourself. Yeah.
Please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much for the presentation. I think during your presentation, you said that there is that thought of farmers benefiting, I think maybe theoretically benefiting from associating with these voluntary certification firms, especially with fair trade. And I guess that is more of the rhetoric and what theoretically the farmers are supposed to gain. But I think according to the data from fair trade itself, the farmers are actually not benefiting. And the reason is that I think fair trade was built, currently their mission is on two principles: offering the cocoa farmer a minimum fair trade price, so that if the world trade price falls below that price, then the farmer is entitled to the fair trade minimum price, or the farmer being given a premium, a fair trade premium, which has been $200 per metric ton for about 20 years until recently, where they increased it to $240. But then for over the last 12 years, the price of cocoa in the world market never, over 90% of the time, it never fell below $2,000, which means the fair trade farmer didn't benefit from the minimum price advantage from associating with fair trade. And then when it comes to the premium, also, when you go to Flosset has a dashboard where they actually indicate what the premium was actually used for, and it's only 22% of the premium that is given to the farmer. It's only 22% that goes to the farmer. But like you rightly mentioned during your presentation, that if it is the farmer that has to go through all the entire processes and everything to be able to produce to suit fair trade standard. you know. So I think there has been, my question is, how do we reconcile the rhetoric and the theoretical understanding of what a voluntary certification is supposed to provide a farmer, and then in practice, what they actually get? Because it seems to me that what is in the mainstream discussion is more of a rhetoric, and nobody is actually drilling down to know exactly what the farmer is actually getting, like some of the statistics that I'm mentioning.
Right. Thank you. I think that's a good question. You know, and I totally agree with you. One of the things which I didn't mention is, and I didn't want to be too overly, I wouldn't want to be overly critical of the sustainability standards or voluntary standards, but one of the critiques of these initiatives is the tendency for them to deepen asymmetrical power relationships between the South, the big buyers from the West, and then or the North, and then the poor, vulnerable farmers in the South. So, you know, there's this like the constant power struggle of who controls the purse and how much I would pay for you and this and that. So all the arguments that you put out, they are genuine, they are right, but that is the economic side. And the economic side of a cocoa farmer has never won. That is a fact, right from the times of fair trade till now, till these new initiatives, the farmer hasn't won. But then if there were any benefits, it could well be and you feel free to call them rhetorics or theoretical, but then there are also, especially in these times that we are in, environmental changes, climate change impacts and all those, some of these initiatives are very rigorous in ensuring that farmers put in place certain measures. For instance, agroforestry on farms, you know, so they wouldn't want farmers to degrade the environment as they cultivate, as they expand. So even if you expand, you replant, so you maintain a certain ecological integrity on your farm. So these could be considered beneficial. They've also been very firm on the issue of child labor. And I'm sure we would all here would agree that we don't want to see children working on cocoa farms. I have argued somewhere that it's not every child labor is child labor on cocoa farms, because these are intergenerational occupations, and children at some time need to be trained to taking things up. But then we also know that there are instances where children are abused on these farms. So the fact that we have some of these programs putting a check on how children can function or not on cocoa farms, I would say that is a good thing. And, you know, we don't always have to measure what is beneficial only in terms of economics, in terms of how much money comes into the farmer's hands. Of course, that is the ultimate. But then we should also look at what kind of values, what kind of well-being attributes are we seeing on cocoa farms, and what are the contribution of some of these programs to the institutionalization of some of these things. You know, I mean, straight away, if a child was found working on the farm or being abused in any other way or form, that farm will not be certified, and you will be shamed. You will be named and shamed. And I think that is a good thing. So yes, I agree with you. And I also talked about the intermediaries and how they reduce how much of money the farmers, they come in between how much of farmers, how much of money farmers could get. So that is, you know, part of the problem. But on the whole, yes, there are questions regarding some of these initiatives. Probably the critical question we need to ask is, how have they become so popular and supportive around the world. I mean, people hail them, even though there are critics who don't believe that they have gone far enough to transform the lives of farmers. They are being hailed as, you know, being very influential in cocoa production. Yeah. Hopefully this helps. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I'm going to take a question from the chat and then I'll get to bring Sophie in. So Jeanette's asking, how do the individual farmers have their voices heard? If there is still poverty within the farms, how do we know, and who's speaking up for the farmers?
Well, farmers speak for themselves, you know, they belong to cooperatives where they voice out. They belong, and in Ghana, I can speak for Ghana because this is where I am. And the farmers in Ghana are those that I know. There are a lot of farmer groups that advocate on behalf of the farmers. But then advocacy doesn't solve their problems. It doesn't end poverty. We know that farmer groups, and I mean, Fair Trade has been advocating for farmers, for cocoa farmers in Ghana for how many years now? But then when we go to the farm gate right now, we would see poverty. So poverty is there. We are not saying poverty is no more. Poverty, farmer poverty is a reality that exists. And it is just the complexity of the dynamics between who buys the cocoa from the farmers, how much money they put on the table, and how much money the farmer actually gets. So that is what perpetuates the poverty, the farmer poverty. We are all hoping and working for a time that the cocoa farmer would get opportunity to buy directly from the big companies, so there wouldn't be intermediaries who would make profit out of them. If those are taken out, then of course we can be sure that you know, the farmers would get money, a value for money. Yeah.
Thanks. So Sophie, you've got a question.
So I'm Sophie Trenchell, and I was the CEO of Divine Chocolate, because I think it's which is the company that's significantly owned by Kwapa Cocoa. I feel as if it's important to disclose my involvement. And so I think the thing I would say, and I don't know where everybody is in terms of doing it. So I've been doing fair trade cocoa for 24 years. And I think that the fact that farmers in a cooperative get to decide how the fair trade premiums are used makes fair trade very distinct from other schemes. And I think that's an important thing. I then think it's obviously important that everybody invests in enabling people to have access to information so that they can make meaningful decisions. And I think that's incumbent on lots of people. So it's incumbent on the people in the cooperative, it's incumbent on the Cocoa Board and the government of Ghana, and it's incumbent on us if we're supporting it. I think, so thank you, Bob, for your presentation. I think what you're saying is completely correct about transparency and accountability, because the problem is nobody actually knows what the facts are. And so one of the facts, I mean, so you're talking about intermediaries as if there are multiple intermediaries. There is only one intermediary in Ghana. It's the government of Ghana. I mean, it's the Cocoa Board. And so the sort of sense of if the world cocoa price is a price which we can see, and also the Cocoa Board has to publish what it gets on average as what it secures as the price, what percentage of the FOB price do the farmers get? And if all of this information was out there, then the farmers would be in a much better position to advocate for themselves, because the cocoa is bought, is sold by the Cocoa Board on the international market in currencies like dollars and euros and sterling, but the farmers are paid CDs, which obviously, which over the last year has had some serious devaluation. So I think there is a need for that. But I think the question I wanted to ask you was do you think that some certification schemes or some sustainability schemes are having more impact than others? Because I am interested in the fact that organic cocoa has a much more significant premium, and whether that might benefit farmers more. So I wanted to hear a bit, because you've sort of immediately launched into fair trade and you're sort of going, yeah, but are all sustainability schemes the same? I mean, in fair trade, we know that the farmers get to decide how they spend the premium, and the premium is a set price and an auditable supply chain. But is there something you're feeling about one scheme against another scheme?
Right. Yes, and I think the premium programs, the organic programs, seem to be seem to have a certain perception, and I think some people tend to favor those than the conventional practices. So I personally think, yes, those certification programs that focus on organic production, they are perceived to be more favored than the other programs. That is just my thought.
So is that perception, can I just, do you think that's a perception from the point of view of the farmers or from the point of view of the buyers? Is that perception of fair trade and organic and, you know, plus being better?
Right. I think it's a perception that started from the market and from the consumer, from the buyers, and it's something that has been, you know, socially constructed to attain a certain value. So the farmers also aspire to meet those kind of requirements, because obviously if I'm going that way, and then I will earn more money and I'll be perceived as being better than what pertains or what exists, then that is what I want to do. So I think, yes, it is a perception that started from the consuming market, which has influenced farmer behavior.
Thanks. I'm going to bring in another question from the chat from Sally, who's asking about the living income differential and how that fits into the debate on cocoa sustainability. So I know that's a sort of joint Ghanaian and Ivorian government initiative to try and increase the amount that is paid for cocoa. Do you feel that that's making any difference in the last couple of years since it's been in?
Well, it's making a difference, but then what it means is that sustainable? Is that, you know, not too long ago in Ghana, I had some conversations around that. Is that living income differential, is that sustainable? Is it going to be the standard going forward and will never change? So these are questions that are still ongoing, but then it fits in. I mean, if we would define cocoa sustainability around that, it makes sense. You know, that at least the government comes in, or the two governments come in and realize that we need to do something to cushion the farmers. At least they acknowledge that there is some kind of unfairness and we have to do something to support. That is fine. But then the question is, well, how far into the future will this initiative survive? You know, that is some of the debates that I've been seeing around here.
Yeah, so we've got another question from Kwame.
Yes, I guess my question is in link with the question Sophie asked around whether there are some sustainability initiatives that may be performing better than the other. Just making a comment on that one, from the point where I think there's an assumption that when some people sign on to a sustainability program and produce according to that standard, automatically all their produce are bought on those terms, which actually is not the case. And that is why, for me, none of them is providing any kind of either social or economic support in any way to the farmer. So if I'm to use fair trade again as an example, in 2019, it was only 8% of all cocoa that was produced on fair trade standards that were sold on fair trade terms. Is only 8%, which means that the farmer produced according to fair trade standards, incurred cost, but was never sold. Their products were never sold on fair trade terms. So the farmer is at a loss. And I'm talking about only 8% of the aggregate product produced on fair trade terms being sold on fair trade terms. And if you can look at the Forest Alliance, the UTZ, and the rest, all of them do not assure the farmer that if they produce according to their standards, their products are going to be purchased on that standards. So fair trade, for example, would say that we are not the ones that sell your beans for you. we only advocate for organizations to buy your beans. So the farmer is not assured that their beans are going to be purchased on all those standards. And so that's the problem. So the West, it's more of a problem of the Western countries for transferring the responsibility of multinational organizations, their responsibility onto the farmers in Africa down there. So anytime issues around child labor comes up, for example, we all know that it's a trickle-down effect. If you don't pay the farmer very well, the farmer wouldn't have enough money to employ the required labor to work in the farm. And so nobody does anybody social good if we remind the farmer to use the right labor to farm in their farm, when at the end of the day, they actually don't have the money to acquire the right people. If you advise the farmer to use good agronomic practices, it still requires money to do that. And if the farmer doesn't have the money, they wouldn't be able to do that. And so I just wanted to put in that comment that there isn't any of them that provides that sort of sustainability as we may perceive it as.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure,
that's
sure,
right, and that's so much of that is to do with the wider point of fair trade campaigning, which is about changing the system, because this is the system, and we at the moment this is the system we have to work in. It's the wrong system, certainly in my opinion, and so much of what we do, rather than asking individuals to make choices on a consumer basis, we should certainly be lobbying those large organisations to encourage them to buy more on fair trade terms. I think my final question to you, Bob, would be, if you were going to start from scratch and design a new system for cocoa sustainability, where would you start, and what are the key things that you would include?
Well, I would include a lot of the things that are already in here, maintaining environmental integrity, taking out issues of child labor, using ethical means in production processes. And then what I would include new is, at the farm gate, anybody who is buying cocoa beans in the world should go directly at the farm gate. And that is where the certification will come in. So if the cocoa bean is bought at the farm gate from the farmers, then we certify that. So that is what I would introduce. And I would take out all intermediaries, because I think that is the bane of the cocoa farmer.
That's really interesting. So thank you so much, Bob, for your presentation. I'm sure everybody's enjoyed it. We do have a couple of videos to show. One of them is actually of a cocoa farmer in Ghana, and I'm going to show her story now. So that's one of the potential solutions. Sorry about that. Yeah, one of the potential solutions that we see for sustainability in cocoa is actually keeping more of the value of the supply chain in country. And so what the project Chocolate Has a Name, what we're looking at is introducing to basic schools in Ghana the history, the geography, the politics, the philosophy, the economics of cocoa, so that their children there understand how their parents became cocoa farmers and how important it is to their economy. But we're also introducing chocolate making workshops. So many cocoa farmers don't really get the opportunity to taste chocolate. They don't really have a connection from the crop that grows to the product that we buy in the supermarket. And so the idea is that we can help the children understand that better by giving them a go at making chocolate bars. And the other lovely video that I've got to share with you tonight is we went to the school in Tokwa Bremen, the girls' school, where we're going to pilot this project. I'll be actually visiting in a couple of weeks' time, but we've asked the girls there to come up with what name they would give to the chocolate bar that they created, which is one of the things that Adele mentioned at the beginning, asking you, what would you call your chocolate bar? So I'm going to share the video now, and then afterwards Adele will come in and translate some of the words that the children are using to describe the experience of making chocolate. So, Del, I think I'm guessing those were chi words, some of those. Obviously, some of them we could understand because they were written in English, but do you want to let us know what some of the other words were that we didn't all understand?
Yeah, thank you, Joanna. And I think it's been a very, I've found this evening very interesting, and thank you, Bob, for this fantastic presentation and the questions in the chat. And I'm just going back to reflect on the question that Jeanette asked and said, who is being the voice of the farmers? And Jeanette, this is the interesting thing about the lived experience, and I'm always honored to go into spaces and introduce myself as a human lived experience storyteller. And the principles on which we hold this space at Africaniwa is a proverb which my grandmother would share, which means if you do not tell your story, be sure someone else would, and they might not tell it right. Tonight, I'm also pleased, Joanna, to say that the cocoa farmer, Abina Yeboah, who shared her story, is on call with us. And when we said Chocolate Has a Name, it was growing a relationship with cocoa farmers and the community putting faces into the spaces and the places. And quite conveniently, I share in spaces like this and say cocoa farmers. I don't know cocoa farmers. I know Sechibia, I know Mami Boedua, I know Abena Boedua. These are cocoa farmers. These are my family, people in whose stories I share. And it's very important that we are able to bring in the much needed nuance into spaces like this. So constantly I have said, we cannot talk about how our planet has been disrepaired without talking about the vulnerable people at whose expense our planet was disrepaired. And I think this is all part of this conversation we're having with Chocolate Has a Name, being able to have a more direct relationship with the farmers. So I'm really pleased to say that the farmer who came to share her story is on call with us. And so we went to the school and we asked the children, if ever you were going to make your bar of chocolate, what would you name it? And Joanna, it wasn't even necessary to ask them the why, because the names are telling a story. And many times I have said, when a child who has lived on a cocoa farm, who used cocoa beans as abacus to do her basic algebra, now begins to understand and goes through that magical transformation of this thing now into something very gooey and brown, sticky and so sweet. That is not a physical experience. It goes beyond the physical to know that something you've always played in can be turned into something else. And the names, the children were using their surnames, the names of their families and their parents. And when a child names a bar of chocolate, Nyaminsa, which means God is provenance. How divine is that bar of chocolate? Children were naming chocolate bars like Nyami Bechere, God knows, and he would determine and he would decide. It encompasses all of their lived experience as children of cocoa farmers, the cultural, the spiritual, and this is why I love the lived experience. In this space, you will hear authentic voices, voices that are credible. And when these children are telling the story, you will know that these are not stories that have been told in proxy, but they've been birthed from their own living experiences. And these stories have not been fueled by any institutional agenda. It is real, it is authentic, it is true. And it's so heartwarming to think that the children will name their bar of chocolates after their families, what they believe, and everything around them. This afternoon, I've been basking in so much joy. And I'm pleased to say that we are still fundraising. We've done a little near half of the amount, which we're targeting, which is £10,000. We have bought 6 electrical grinders. We've bought our molds and few things that we know we will struggle to get in Ghana. And I'm yet to find out if they are on sea or they've reached their destination already. There's a room that has been assigned for our lab, and it's just unbelievable. I have said, if this project never worked, it will not be the first time people in cocoa growing communities or people in rural Ghana have been promised everything and been given nothing. But quite tangibly, these children are going to see that the stuff that have been sent to them, they have a room that has been assigned. So bit by bit, it's coming to fruition. And I wish I was going to Ghana with you next month, Joanna. It's just amazing. So thank you everyone for supporting us. Joanna has linked the crowdfunder page, the link to the crowdfunder in the chat box. And I want to say thank you very much indeed for supporting us. John, if there's a minute, I will hand over if Abena Yeboah would like to say something to the community this evening, and then possibly I could go ahead and translate. Bismarck, if you can hear me, are we able to have Mami Abena Yeboah just share a word with the community this evening, please?
Yeah, I mean, she's ready. She would like to share something small with all of us.
Okay then. Nti mami ya mwakwa aba efidie yi so ya hwe video no kama mmofra no so sene ye ka se obi a utumi ya wo chocolate anka wo friend send mmofra na church o ma adwin bebre nti enwumre asem bi wo ho anase adwenkyere bi wo ho anase bibi da wakoma so opese woni ebusuafo a yehia ha enwumre echa na won so ye bi ekwan ni mama nti ubetumi akoso no ache ne fefefe.
What to say?
Yɛn nyinaa yɛ ho yɛ nti ɛyi asɛm bi wɔ ha a ɔpɛ sɛ nnɛ wode to ɔmanfoɔ anim anaa?
Mpakyɛ banana chocolate na wɔyɛ ɛyɛ paa aboa.
I think these were some of the technical difficulties we anticipated to dip in and out of the conversation, but she's just simply said she's in awe of the project. For her, she's looking for the project to take off. And going back to the video, constantly she was saying that I have not benefited from cocoa farming. I've not benefited from cocoa farming. And for me, it draws out some of the many nuances that Bob will share in his presentation earlier on, when he was saying that, why do we have poverty? So she was saying she has not benefited from cocoa farming. And the powerful statement is, when my husband died, he died with a farm. And she's hopeful that perhaps this project is one thing that will make her children go back into farming. Over to you, Joanna.
Thanks. Yes, I think it's so important for us to Jeanette's point, to actually hear direct from the farmers. And even if we can't get a good connection live, being able to bring in a video that's been pre-made and hear that story direct is so important. So thank you so much to everyone who's made that possible tonight. I've put a couple of links in the chat. The first one is the link to the crowdfunder. If you want to support us, I'm going, as Adele mentioned, a week on Saturday, I'm heading out to Ghana. I'm going to go up to Tarkwa Bremen School, meet some of the children and the teachers there, and try and sort of see where we're going with the workshops. I'm also going to go up to New Koforidua, which was the first fair trade town in Africa. So I'll be visiting them. And I believe I'll be making a visit to the first cocoa bushes that were planted, cocoa trees that were planted by Tete Kwashi as well. So I'm really doing a proper sort of deep dive into cocoa in Ghana, and I'll bring back some fantastic memories, definitely, but also photos and videos to show you what's going on with cocoa farmers in Ghana. And the second link that I put in the chat is for my event next Thursday, so this time next week, and that will be a look into bird and forest friendly agriculture, including cocoa farmers from Sierra Leone, but also coffee farmers from Uganda. So I'm hoping that some of you will be able to come along to that as well. So it just remains for me to thank Bob and Adele and the rest, all of you, for coming along tonight. This session's been recorded and it will be uploaded to the Fairtrade NCC's YouTube channel, so you'll be able to watch it. And anybody that's booked through Eventbrite, I'll send you the link to that recording. So if you want to share it with your networks, then please do. And thanks very much and good evening.